Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. We are recapping the second day of the Senior Bowl in this Pewter Prime Time episode. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in this evening. Yes, day two of the Senior Bowl was very action-packed. Once again, we're going to focus on the defense with a little bit of attention to the offense as well to break down everything that we saw and as it pertains to your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me, once again, it'll be a giant rotation of Pewter reporters, but leading off the show, our Ricky Henderson of the podcast is none other than Josh Capo. Josh, hello. We usually do these shows from afar. Now we are together, but it's great to see you.
Josh appreciates seeing you as well.
Okay, Ricky Henderson. Yeah, I get it now. But yeah, we are here in Mobile, Alabama, day two of the Senior Bowl. A lot went on, some defensive performances. I don't think that the Bucs have changed what they're going to do with their draft plans. It's still going defense first.
Yeah, I think if you see like more than two offensive players taken, I would have a heart attack myself, and I'm in fairly decent health. So we at Pewter Report certainly kept our eye on the defense for the second day in a row. And I would say defense really stood out for the most part. Certainly in the team drills, tended to win more of the reps than the offense did overall.
No doubt about it. I mean, I've been putting together the highlight list of what you're going to see in our YouTube channel from day two of the Senior Bowl. And I'm like, man, I'm running that offensive plays. It's like sack, it's PBU, it's interception, one play action pass rollout. So it's definitely a lot of defense that is kind of taking the center stage during these first two practices of the week. Each team does one in the morning, and then the other team does it in the afternoon. The national team goes in the morning, and then followed by the American team. By the way, shout out to everybody that is in the comments at the moment. James Show started off with Duval, but then El Ajani, not sure if this is a troll, went Duval with paying homage to Liam Cohen. But nonetheless, we appreciate everybody that is joining us this evening. As Nathan Elliott says, Prime Time Pewter Report podcast. Yeah, we're going to be doing these throughout really the season, maybe some emergency podcasts depending on what's going on. But we know we have fan bases all over across the globe as well, people that are working when we do our typical 4:00 podcast. So we want to reach as many audiences as we can. And we get that luxury when we are in Mobile for the Senior Bowl, when we have a lot going on during the day, can kind of recap what went on during these primetime episodes. So let's get into what we saw a little bit today, Josh, from today's practices. What kind of stood out to you? What did you like? What didn't you like? Just your overall observations of how everything went.
Yeah, I think there are three players that I really kind of keyed in on yesterday. Myself and Scott Reynolds tended to really stick to the defensive line, the edge players and linebackers. And today I wanted to get a feel for more of that secondary and specifically the cornerback position. There were three cornerbacks that stood out to me. The first one you can see on the screen there, and that is Iowa State cornerback Darian Porter. Thank you. He is the quintessential Todd Bowles cornerback. Mm-hmm. He came in at 6'2 3/8, 197 pounds, 33 1/4 inch arms, over a 79-inch wingspan, and he played like he was a lengthy corner. There was one particular rep where he ended up front-siding a ball and just basically put the receiver in his shadow. You could not see him anymore. And just used his length really well. He was speedy. He showed his man press coverage skills. He could fall into cover three quarters. So just a really well-rounded, long, lengthy corner. And that to me is somebody who I think the Bucs would definitely be interested in. The second one that he was probably my favorite of the entire day was Louisville corner Quincy Riley. Mm-hmm. Now, not so much a prototypical Bucs corner. He comes in at under 6 feet tall at 5'10" and 3/8", but 192 pounds. I really like the frame there, thick through the core. He's quick, And the thing that I think may make the Bucs reconsider their length requirements is the ball production, something that Bucs corners have struggled with over the last few years, much to the team and especially fans' chagrin. Riley in 3 seasons has 8 interceptions, 27 passes defense, and he led the ACC in 2024 with 13 pass breakups. I think that's something that showed on his tape coming into the Senior Bowl, and it continued during the Senior Bowl. He stayed in phase. He would not, there was no release package that left him in the dust. And he just stayed on wide receivers' hip pockets. So that was the second one. And then a third one who kind of showed up day one for me. I clocked him in team drills. He continued to show up, pulled up lame with a little bit of an ankle injury late, but it seemed like that was nothing major. But that was Ole Miss cornerback Trey Amos. And Amos, he's very smart. He uses the sideline as an extra defender, eliminating space that receivers can really work through. He's over 6 feet, so he checks that box. He's got long arms, and he was very impressive as well, just through several reps. The one thing that the one corner who I think his draft stock fell, at least in my eyes, on day 2 here, was Florida State cornerback Isaiah Thomas. With him, I worry about his speed, not his deep, his overall deep speed, but just that quick within the first 10 to 15 yards. That acceleration, that burst, he was constantly losing ground on deeper vertical routes. So those were the 4 that stood out. 3 for a positive reason, 1 for a not so positive reason.
Yeah, I appreciate all that insight. By the way, Josh had an article yesterday kind of recapping the best performances from defensive players from day 1 of the Senior Bowl. So if you haven't checked that out yet, make sure you do. He's going to have another write-up coming up at some point, either tonight or tomorrow, with further information about the Senior Bowl. And you and I were talking about this. Everybody really was, because we all travel together, and Pewter Report travels in packs. We were kind of talking about some of the individual drills that these players and these teams do. And, when you have a cornerback against a wide receiver, it's a little unfair to the cornerback because you're not getting help from the pass rush or any, safety help over the top. But I thought you brought up a really good point about how cornerbacks can't necessarily lose in terms of the minds of like scouts and GMs and things like that, but they can really kind of add to their big payday, hopefully down the road, with the really good performance. So with that in mind as well, would it be important for the Bucs to kind of, no pun intended, buck that trend of the Todd Bowles type of corner with the tall lankiness? Because we saw it with Jamel Dean, we saw it with Carlton Davis back in the day as well. But the name of the game this offseason for the Bucs really is to improve everywhere on defense, but specifically take the ball away. Because I think we saw that in the postseason. The teams that were taking the ball away, I mean, you can look at the Eagles and the amount of turnovers they created against the Commanders, who knocked the Bucs out of the postseason. That's one of the big reasons that they're playing for the Super Bowl coming up next week.
Yeah, I think you find a way to get talented individuals on your team, and then you find a way to maximize those talents. There are lots of good corners in the NFL who are under 6 feet tall. DJ Reed is about to get his second big contract in free agency. He's 5'9", right? Quinyon Mitchell, I don't think cleared 6 foot last year as a rookie, and had a fantastic season for the Commanders. Mike Sainristil for the Eagles. Mike Sainristil for the Commanders, another guy sub 6 feet, had a fantastic season. So, and specifically with Todd Bowles' system, as zone heavy as it is, and cover 3 heavy as it is, and quarters heavy as it is, I think the more important thing is just finding somebody who can quickly click and close on a ball and be at the catch point at the time when the ball arrives. You don't have to be super tall to do that. You have to be twitchy. And I think Quincy Riley certainly checks that box. I think he could be a great addition to the Bucs defense, to almost any defense in the NFL. And he stood out to me as really the guy that, out of all of these players, who I was most interested in. I'm going to go back and watch a bit more of his film, because I'm really excited to see what else is on there.
I've had this thought for a while. I brought it up on Pewter Report podcast before, so this isn't like necessarily breaking news, but I felt for a while, like going back to the Bucs draft in 2020 when they started with Tristan Wirfs and Antoine Winfield Jr. right after that. And it was 2 slam dunk, home run, 100-yard touchdown, interception return for a touchdown type of draft picks. And my thought was that it kind of ruined it for every other draft pick for everybody else, because it doesn't happen that way all the time where you draft someone and they are immediately spectacular and fantastic and fans love them in every single way. Especially because Tristan Wirfs was the 4th tackle taken off the board. I love that little tidbit and that caveat when it comes to it. But to bring this back to the secondary and corners and everything we were just talking about, you see what the Eagles are doing with their rookie corners. You mentioned Sam still with the Commanders as well. Do we look at what goes on with those teams and say, all right, there is a path for corners to kind of excel right away, right out of the gate? Or is it more of, hey, that's a special talent, that's a really unique situation, and it still takes time for development? Because we could look at Zion McCollum, and we've seen how he's risen up the ranks season by season, but it took him a couple of years to kind of become this mainstay starting at corner. I'm very curious about your thoughts about that.
I think it really depends on the system that a corner is in. Todd Bowles' system is very complicated, and I don't mean that in a negative way. Yeah. It is widely considered one of the more complicated systems in the NFL. I think the simpler you can make it for a rookie, the more opportunity they have to just let their talent, their traits just play up. So it's a little bit of both. I think you want to put them in the best situation possible. And depending on the system they're in, it could be bringing them along slowly in certain systems that are a little bit, don't ask as much of their players. Then I think that allows those guys to potentially play a little bit freer, a little bit faster. And another one, his name is failing me, but it was out in Seattle a couple years ago. But yeah, there are guys who can do that. You can find those guys in the draft. It's just a matter of what you ask of them.
I got a couple of comments to get to. Buckfan1976 says, Jacksonville is going to throw a lot of money at Chris Godwin. Hope he stays. He's going to have interest. And it's funny, right? Because there's a couple of similarities between the last time Chris Godwin was available in free agency and now this time he's available in free agency. Last time he's coming off a really bad injury, and it was worse that time around than it is right now. But, there is still some questions about his overall how he can function post-injury. And I also find it interesting that once again, he's in the conversation as the best wide receiver available. Like this time around, T. Higgins is in the mix. We talked about how we'd be surprised if Chris Godwin were to leave, but is there any type of like crazy throwing the bag at Chris Godwin type of scenario where maybe he does go to Jacksonville just based on obviously what Liam Cohen was able to do for him in his time with the Bucs last season? How do you see that playing out?
I think the Jaguars have a lot bigger issues on their offensive line. And I think that is going to be where they focus in on. They already have an extremely talented wide receiver in Brian Thomas Jr. They could potentially keep Christian Kirk. They have somebody to kind of play a slot role in Evan Engram. He's a tight end, but he's a power slot, and that's what Chris Godwin is. So is it possible that they pursue Godwin? Yes. Do I think they throw the bag at him? Not really. I don't think they go and overpay for him because I think that Liam Cohen is fantastic at building around the talent that he has. He doesn't have to go out and get specific guys to run his system because he's really good at creating a system around them. And I think what he's going to want to do is feature Brian Thomas Jr. He's coming off of an absolutely incredible rookie season. He was probably the most productive wide receiver in this draft, this past draft. And I think he's going to want to build around Brian Thomas Jr. He's going to want to find better offensive linemen to help protect Trevor Lawrence and get that run game, which has a couple of talented running backs in Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne going. So will there be interest? Sure. Do I think that they go and absolutely blow Godwin away and take the Bucs out of the running for him? I just don't foresee that being the case.
Still need to get those praise be to Godwin shirts.
That's right.
Going. I'm a huge fan of Brian Thomas Jr. I know everyone's sick about talking about the Jaguars, but I think another thing that was impressive too is like, yes, he did it with Trevor Lawrence, but Mac Jones was in there for a number of games as well, and his production didn't necessarily stop. Have another comment from Tom, who says last year the Bucs said if Barton was not there, they were going to draft Johnny Newton, who's from the Tampa Bay area. Do you think we are still targeting a defensive tackle early?
I think they could. I think the Bucs are in a spot where it seems to be a pretty talented defensive draft overall. And I think they have enough needs across all three levels of the defense that if there is a defensive tackle in the first round who is heads and tails above the linebackers available, the cornerbacks available, the safeties available at that, or the edges available at that spot, that they would feel comfortable taking that and adding to their pass rush. And I think Scott Reynolds has done a really great job of kind of outlining why would you take a first round defensive tackle when you already have Kalijah Kancey and Vita Vea? Well, Vita Vea is 2 years away from the end of his current contract. Mm-hmm. He is approaching 30 if he's not already there. I can't remember exactly where he is, but he's right at that 30 cusp. And Logan Hall, Will Golston and Greg Gaines are both technically free agents. Will Golston is almost my age. That's not good when you play football. And then Logan Hall is 1 year away from his contract being up, and there's no guarantee that the Bucs are going to re-sign him. He's certainly not going to get an extension this offseason.
What was the song we came up with Greg Gaines? You're talking about it before.
Oh, you put me on the spot. I can't remember it.
Yeah. Sorry. Anyway, how about Logan Hall? Because Logan Hall, we were in a situation talking about it last season where it was like, Bucs might be ready to move on from Logan Hall once his contract is done, just based on, his production up until that point. But then he came out this year, had a career best in sacks, had a great game against the Commanders. And we have a little bit of breaking news as well. Jeremy Fowler from ESPN is saying the Jaguars have requested to interview Bucs offensive line coach Kevin Carberry for a similar role, but were blocked by Tampa Bay, per sources. New head coach Liam Cohen, former Bucs offensive coordinator, had success with Carberry last year and looked into bringing him along. All right, so a little bit of gamesmanship that is going on. And thank you for the info, our PR team that is our stat guys at the moment while we're doing the show live. But we could talk about Logan Hall another time. Carberry has really been a renaissance man when it comes to the Bucs offensive line. I mean, obviously, and we were talking about this with Trevor Sikkema earlier today when we were at the Senior Bowl. The Bucs went through really some catastrophic moments with their offensive line between, Ryan Jensen getting injured and Ali Marpet kind of abruptly retiring. Alex Kappa left for free agency, but it's one thing when you can prepare for one guy to leave, but when all of a sudden you have three guys leaving, you have to revamp essentially that entire offensive line. You had rookies, coming in and veterans coming in where you need that overall chemistry and meshing together. But then all of a sudden they were able to turn around quickly. And Kevin Carberry, I think, was really a big reason for that.
Yeah. And I sometimes we try to do our best to really talk about the impact of different coaches. And I don't know if we necessarily give Carberry all the respect that he deserves, because he oversaw Luke Gedeke really ascending into the upper echelon of right tackles in the NFL this year. He oversaw Cody Mauch going from a guy who was best described by Jason Light in the offseason as he played every snap last year. Now we're talking about, I've made the case that he's a Pro Bowl talent. That's a big step up in year two.
Yeah.
He oversaw Graham Barton having a very solid rookie season with flashes of brilliance. He got the most out of Ben Bredesen, who had not been very good in his career. Oh, yeah, and he helped Tristan Wirfs, who made a successful transition to left tackle in 2023, ascend back into it all-pro status in 2024. Every single guy on that line had a positive year, something I would say above their mean in terms of potential outcomes. That's incredible to do that, not with, like you said, not just with one or two guys, all across the line. And I'll put it out there. I am just beside myself thinking Liam Cohen, did he really think the Bucs weren't going to block?
Did he think he was going to, do you think he was going to sneak that by the Bucs as well?
Oh, yeah. No, we just want
what is he sending message by Raven or Pigeon or something?
We just want to talk, guys. That's all. absolutely they were going to block that.
Right. And I love where this offensive line is at. And you kind of just mentioned it already. Like, Kristen Wirfs is here for a while. Gedeke is in line for an extension. Graham Barton looked good as a rookie, and I think will only get better. And there was a big step with Cody Mauch, who you see on the screen, obviously, next to Graham Barton as well. So once you figure out left guard, and, I'm okay with Ben Bredeson coming back. But if the Bucs also think that they can upgrade from Ben Bredeson, I think that's really important too. Love some of the comments that we got as well. Penn Wallace says, good F Liam. John Boobin says, I would block everyone Cohen asked to interview.
I like that because he didn't say everyone on the Bucs. I think that Jason Light should just try and block every person in the NFL and college football from the talking.
Just hire Shaquille O'Neal. I know Shaq's a very busy guy, but you send him out to Jacksonville, have him block some shots. Maybe get Vince Carter involved. I know he's not the tallest of guys, but NBA players compared to NFL players are still much larger. If we want to open that debate again of how many NBA players can play in the NFL and how many NFL players could end up in the NFL. So, yeah, a little bit of breaking news there on the show that tends to happen from time to time, but kind of funny to see nonetheless. Josh, before you hop off, just any parting thoughts about the Senior Bowl? Maybe other things that stood out to you, maybe positions that you want to watch for Thursday's practice. What should the Pewter people be paying attention to?
Yeah, for Thursday's practice, I'm hoping to take a little bit more of a hard look at the offensive line. I think there is a chance that the Bucs select an offensive lineman in the draft, especially because as of right now, they don't really have that backup tackle. They most likely lose some depth on the interior offensive line. I think they'll probably lose Robert Hainsey in free agency. And again, Bredeson is technically a free agent, although I think the Bucs will have interest in bringing him back, but just gaining some depth there. So I want to take a look there. And as I take a look at the Senior Bowl, and you and I talked about it a little bit earlier, that it's kind of been a defense first Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
How fortuitous that this is the draft that the Bucs need a ton of help on defense. So it's kind of aligning with a lot of their needs that this could be another very successful draft, just in terms of where the strengths of the class line up with the needs of the Bucs. You can see right here, Jeffrey Basso. I did get to watch him a little bit today as well. The one-on-ones were not friendly to him. You brought it up earlier. They're not designed to be friendly to the defenders, but when he got into those 11-on-11s, he showed up. And then I got to talk to him a little bit after practice. And one of the things that I asked him about was, because he actually brought it up, I thought it was really mature of him. He said, yeah, I didn't have the greatest reps today. I had a few that I really wanted back. And those were specifically in those one-on-ones where he got his ankles broken a couple times by some very shifty backs, some really good running backs here in Mobile. But the very last rep in those one-on-ones, he came back with a vengeance, as Scott Reynolds put into our group chat, and he got a pass breakup. And I asked him, how do you process that? And he had a really great answer about, you just got to wash it away. That play is over. There's nothing I can do about it except learn from it, grow from it, and move on and be better, because I'm a leader and I've got to show other people how to do that. I thought it was a very mature answer from a very smart young man who I think, I'll flat out say it, he's a draft crush of mine. I'm really, really excited about him. And then Demetrius Knight, the second, another linebacker, had a rough day one. He had a really great day. Day two, Trevor Sycamore and I were texting about him. We are so back on Demetrius Knight, and he said, my king. And so some good performances from the linebackers as well.
Yeah, there's not many people that are going to be 100% fantastic when they are at these big events. So it's great to see. Not that you want someone to, have a bad day or something like that, but to overcome some adversity, wipe the slate clean, and then have a better day the second and third time around. You know who I'm going to be, or what I'm going to be looking at for tomorrow?
What's that?
The inside of the fridge, so I can grab a Celsius energy drink, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. Celsius has fueled us on the way to Mobile, Alabama. We've done a lot of driving, but we've been up cranking out some content, going from Tampa to Mobile, Alabama. And of course, Celsius has a number of fantastic flavors to choose from. We've been having a lot of the Arctic vibe. We like the Playa vibe, or the Playa vibe, which is a pina colada flavor. You see the sparkling watermelon lemonade on the screen there as well. So if you need to know where to find a Celsius energy drink, maybe you're in a new location like we are during this week, you can go to the Celsius store locator, punch in your address and tell you the closest location where you can pick one up. Could be a Walmart, a Target, a Publix, or a Stop and Shop, or maybe, just maybe, it's your bodega.
Bodega.
Very nice.
For a false start.
No, that's all right. Listen, people love doing the bodega. People do it in the comments. So no harm, no foul right there. As Christopher Oxentine says, the retro vibe is really good. So if you know you love Celsius and you want more, you want to get it in bulk, you can purchase it in bulk over on Amazon with the subscribe and save. Thank you, Jeff the Champ. I recommend the variety pack because there's so many fantastic flavors. Have it sent to your place of residence at your own leisure. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. Bailey Adams, hello.
Hello.
Thank you for joining the show. Your immediate reaction to Kevin Carberry getting asked by the Jaguars to interview and the Bucs going Mutombo, RIP Mutombo, saying denied.
Good. I mean, that was my initial reaction, was good. I think it makes sense. I think there was actually, kind of some stones on Liam Cohen to even ask. And it not be, because obviously he's under contract. It has to be a promotion for him to go,
right?
And for him to just say straight up, I know he's under contract, but can I interview him?
In a weird way, no way, I think Liam Cohen believes that he's Jerry Maguire when he leaves the agency, and he's like, "All right, who's coming with me? Kevin Carberry, you're coming with me." And Carberry's like, "No, like I have a good thing here. Yeah. I got a really good thing going on." So yeah, that just doesn't make much sense. And I know some people want us to move on from Liam Cohen leaving and all that stuff. And we were very happy to do so. We weren't even really going to utter Liam Cohen at all unless we were kind of comparing the most recent offense. And how conversations go on this podcast. But what can we do? He's trying to poach some more Bucs players. So it comes back into the conversation. But yeah, Carberry, we kind of just already talked about it with Josh, just how important he was to the team this season. And it helps the running back room as well, whether it's Bucky Irving just kind of being a stud this year in his rookie season. Rachaad White's still very formidable. And I mean, who would have thought out of the Bucs running back room, if I said 2 out of the 3 guys are going to win NFC Offensive Player of the Week, surely Sean Tucker would have been one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody knew it would be Sean Tucker at some point or another, whether it was going to be in week 6 or week 17, week 18. They knew it would happen once, right?
Yeah. By the way, we have a super chat from our main man, Leighton Carter. Thank you, Leighton, for the $5 super chat, who says, "Great job, guys." Yes, thank you very much, Leighton. Appreciate your kind words as well. You had tweeted at us or X'd at us, whatever you want to call it, earlier in the week, wishing us safe travel. So thank you so much for the kind words, Leighton. We appreciate you. You really are the best. Bucs Basement, thank you for the $2 super chat. Says, "Bucs blocked Liam. Keep doing that." Well, maybe this will be something where Liam Cohen learns his lesson and says, I'm not going to go down that well once again.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm very curious to see how it goes from there. I mean, I think he understands, I'm sure he probably should have from the start, that if he's going to ask, they're going to say no. And now that they've said no once, I don't think the Bucs will see somebody else that he asks to interview and they're like, you can actually take that guy if you want. I think they're pretty happy with the staff that they have under contract right now. And I know it will depend. It does depend on who they hire as their offensive coordinator, all that stuff. But, yeah, I don't know that he'll try again after being blocked at least once.
It's going to be a real damning sign if the Bucs are like, take that assistant coach. Sure. No
I think
problem
at that point, if Liam saw that, he'd be like, actually, maybe I don't want to interview him. If they're ready to let him go, then maybe that's something I should second guess.
Some other news that came out today in regards to the Bucs coaching staff search and everything going on with their assistant coaches. We talked about it yesterday on the show. Actually, Pewter Report, we were the ones to report it, but today it was finalized, and the Bucs announced it as well, that the Bucs completed an interview with Josh Grisard, an in-house interview, of course. It's starting to feel like he might be one of the top options just based on when they decided to go and interview him. And, yeah, I mean, in-house, don't hate that idea of continuity with Baker Mayfield.
I don't either, and I think it was interesting to see how they went about it. They interviewed 5 external candidates, and, it's not to say they won't add any more to that group, but interviewed 5 external candidates. Then they gave Grisard his interview, and I think there's a lot to love about the idea of continuity with Baker Mayfield. Again, he was the pass game coordinator, so he worked with not just Baker Mayfield, but all aspects of the passing game. So there's a lot of familiarity there. He is a guy who is young, but he's gotten a lot of experience over the course of his career. I mean, it's kind of wild to see his coaching trajectory and where it's taken him already. But his work with receivers in the past, his work with quarterbacks, was the guy who was in charge of third downs for the Bucs this year, and they led the league with 51.1% third down conversion percentage. So a lot to love about him as a candidate. And it's almost weird. It's kind of feeling like we're going to get the end of this week like we did last year, where at the end of last year's Senior Bowl week, we got the news on Friday that the Bucs were hiring Liam Cohen. And I do wonder if it's going to be something that comes up here pretty quickly.
Obviously, you have to move fast in these situations because you don't want to be the team in musical chairs, or in this case, musical coordinators that doesn't have an offensive coordinator. But it is crazy. Every time we are in Mobile or leaving Mobile, some big stuff happens. Tom Brady retires. Tom Brady comes back. Tom Brady retires again. Liam Cohen, like you just mentioned, and now the offensive coordinator search continues to march on, but it feels like that march isn't going on.
I did have flashbacks when we were in the convention center today getting ready to do our interviews with the Senior Bowl players, and remembering being there for the emergency I keep saying press conference. The emergency podcast when Tom Brady retired. We were in the middle of it doing interviews, and we had to find a hallway out there in the convention center to do that podcast. And I was wondering, like, are they going to hire a coordinator while we're here? Because then we're going to have to find a table again. We're going to have to do this all over again. So that didn't happen, but wouldn't be surprised if it's something that happens soon.
Interesting point from Grace Point, who says, I don't see a scrimmage happening. NFL probably won't allow it. Too many emotions. Yeah, that is honestly one of the first things I thought about was the Bucs. They really enjoy doing those joint training camp practices in August. They believe they get a lot of benefit out of it just based on, you're not hitting the same teammate over and over again. You can kind of learn a lot of things. And obviously there's been one less preseason game with the rule changes that came a couple of seasons ago. I don't know if that necessarily rules it out. Now, the Bucs have done it a lot more with like the Dolphins and the Titans than they necessarily have with the Jaguars. Just kind of knowing Todd Bowles a little bit, though, I could see him being like, listen, it's a league. Coaches move all the time. I've been to 5 different places. Like, I'm not going to hold it against him and all those things. So maybe a
1-year break.
Maybe 1 year break. But acid takes the heart grow fonder type of thing. Let time for that wound to heal just a little bit. But to get back to Grisard real quick as well, I think something that's important for their coaching search, and you mentioned it a moment ago, is not just that he went to Yale, which I think is beneficial, not just that he comes from the Mike McDaniel coaching tree and obviously learned from Liam Cohen here this year. I think it's that he coached a number of different positions. He can kind of put himself in the shoes of the other coaches that are getting involved, or how to get the best out of a running back or a wide receiver or a quarterback in this situation with the passing game. So I just think having overall those experiences will help him out specifically in the long run versus someone that's really only coached one position.
Yeah, and I think we've seen a lot of that with the guys that they've brought in for offensive coordinator interviews. The first 6, obviously now. Most of them have actually been virtual, but the guys they've talked to so far have been guys with multiple different positions they've coached in the past. A lot of it within the passing game, but you've seen some quarterbacks coaches, tight ends coaching, pass game coordinator in Los Angeles. So there is a lot of that, and I think the Bucs have a type almost this time around. It was like the past 2 off seasons they had the searches where they were casting a wide net. There were I think 10 or 12 last year, maybe 10 the year before, and then this year it's been 6 so far. There could be more, like I said, but it feels like all of these guys have a lot in common. Their youth. I think they're like you said, they're different backgrounds as far as coaching wide receivers, coaching quarterbacks, pass game coordinators, all that kind of stuff. So it does seem like they're kind of going after a specific type of candidate this time.
You have a type as well as UCF players. You got to speak to a couple of them today. Why don't you just give us the nuts and bolts of those conversations with some of the UCF guys?
Yeah, it was a good time talking to those guys. BJ Adams, who shares, I guess, initials and almost a name with me.
Yeah.
He's Brandon Adams, but he's changed it to, or he don't change it. He goes by BJ Adams. If I went by BJ, then we'd have the same name. But we don't. No, really, really fun to talk to those guys. He's a pretty tall, like long corner, a little bit on the like slider side. I think he's like 195, 196, what he weighed in at. A guy who the first 3 years of his career didn't have any interceptions, got 2 this year. I think we saw him grow a little bit this year as far as just his overall ability to stick to receivers and playing at a high level against high competition in the Big 12. But yeah, I mean, good talking to those guys. And I think he said he hadn't met with the Bucs, but he would love to play, or he would love to meet with them because he loves playing in Florida. So
yeah, how could you not after living here for a little bit? And he had one of the biggest plays on the first day of the Senior Bowl. You could check it out on our social media, on our Instagram specifically. It's one of the most viewed videos that we have from the Senior Bowl so far. But sticking with the theme of the Senior Bowl, Bailey, we had an article come out the other day. You know, we had some time for conversation with the long car ride from Tampa to Mobile. And a cool thing, and you've done a story about it before as well, with Jason Light going to the Senior Bowl, quite often with his draft picks. So we came up with the PR roundtable of who was the best Bucs player to come from the Senior Bowl. And we're kind of talking a little bit more about what they did in their Bucs career, but they happened to, go to the Senior Bowl as well. And obviously, we don't want to pick the same person, so there are some more obvious answers than others. But Scott went with Ali Marpet. I went with Zion McCollum. You had Anthony Nelson. Josh had Cody Mauch, who also threw in that Cody Mauch had a Yelp review from the Walk-Ons over in Mobile. And Adam went with Luke Gedeke as well. But tell us a little bit behind your reasoning for Anthony Nelson.
This feels like my platform to defend myself. I think, like you said, that there are more obvious answers than others. And I think if we were to do it kind of just in a rapid fire, who was the best of this list, because there were 29 of them since Jason Light became the GM in 2014. Ali Marpet would be the answer, and Donovan Smith's up there too. I went with a different route to kind of talk about the value they've found in Anthony Nelson. He's been pretty underrated and underappreciated throughout the whole course of his career. Obviously, Todd Bowles loves him, does whatever is asked of him, and he has now played for the Bucs for, what is it? I think he's going on his 7th season, might be his 6th season. He's done it in a depth role. He's done it, when they've asked him to step in as a spot starter due to injury, whatever it is. And I think he's a guy with upwards of like 18 sacks or so over the last few years. He was kind of a slow starter to his career, but came around. And for him being drafted in the 4th round, I think the Bucs have gotten a lot of value out of him. They signed him to the contract extension a couple of years ago, and I think he's about to enter a contract year. And I do wonder what his future will be like after this year, because obviously, if Todd Bowles sticks around, and he's still, Anthony Nelson's not an old man. He could be due for another contract, and I think Todd Bowles would love to have him stick around. I'm sure he would like to stick around. So yeah, just to defend that, the value they found as a 4th rounder. And I know you went kind of a similar way with the 5th rounder in Zion McCollum.
Yes. By the way, Anthony Nelson is in the middle of our birthday week, or right after you and I. Yeah, I believe he's the 9th. Okay. But anyways, I agree with what you said. I mean, Anthony Nelson has been that steady Eddie type of guy. He's not going to be a Bucs Ring of Honor member or anything like that, but he seems to make a play here or there when he needs to. Obviously, one of the best plays of his Bucs career was forcing that. Yeah, saved the season, was forcing that fumble against Chuba Hubbard and the Panthers in overtime, as Tom says. Unsung hero Nelson. Yeah, absolutely. And I went with Zion McCollum. I just think, again, his rising up the ranks from, a 5th round pick out of Sam Houston, FCS conference, a ball hawk for sure, a lot of speed, but, not going up against the best type of competition. And then all of a sudden he gets thrust into action a lot his 2nd year. And it's important to point out, like his 1st year, he struggled a lot with tackling and physicality. Yeah. But he worked and put in the effort and got so much better at tackling the next year. He ended up starting 9 games due to the various injuries to Jamel Dean and Carlton Davis. Played safety in that playoff game against the Eagles. And then, in year 3, upped his game, became a full-time starter, only had to stay in one spot, was tied for the team lead in interceptions. I know the Bucs didn't have a lot of interceptions this year, but somebody had to lead the team, and it was actually a tie between Zion and Tyke Smith. So we'll see what's in store for Zion and Anthony Nelson as well for next season.
You know, what I think speaks to what Zion did, at least in his second year when he had to step in for Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis at different points, is he played well enough to where the Bucs were comfortable enough to part ways with Carlton Davis last offseason and trade him away to Detroit because they felt like Zion had proven that he was ready for a starting spot. And, you know, early on this season really definitely cemented himself as their number one corner. I know there was a little bit of a dip in his play down the stretch, but I think still, like Josh and like Scott mentioned yesterday, the arrow is pointing up for him going into his fourth season already, which is crazy to think about.
By the way, we got to give a shout out to our Pewter Platinum members. So thank you to Scott Federico, Rathel Gordon, Noah Parr, Scotty J, Dave Anderson, Eric McMillan, Zach Jarvis, Hezo813, Ash Fishpool, Joel Elrican, Sam, John Dale, Morris, and Zap Brannigan. Thank you all so much for your support of PewterReport.com. We couldn't do it without you. By the way, for you Pewter Platinum and Premier members, we will have a Pewter Insider coming up on Friday at our regularly scheduled time at 1:30. It will be all about the latest on the Bucs offensive coordinator search. Now, we say the latest because who knows what will happen by Friday. Maybe the Bucs have interviewed a couple of more candidates. Maybe they bring back some people that they already interviewed for a second interview, or maybe they just hired someone. But we will have that coming up at 1:30 on Friday. And then, of course, we're going to have a live Bucs mock draft coming up on Sunday. I believe at 9 a.m. It'll be with Josh Capo and Adam Slivon. Looking forward very much to that. We are in full swing with the draft and who the Bucs are going to be interested in and all of that good stuff. So we have a lot more content coming up from PewterReport.com. Bailey, before you get out of here, and then we'll bring on Adam Slivon. One comment I wanted to get to before. I'm curious to get your opinion about it. It was from Baby Boy to Dumb Man, who says, outside linebacker, inside linebacker in the first, DB in the second and third, then wide receiver in the fourth. Best player available the rest of the way. We appreciate your thought process behind what you want to see the Bucs do. I'm curious, since this is a defensive show, at least for tonight's episode, what position do you think is the most important defensive position of need for Tampa Bay?
I don't actually hate this roadmap right here that Baby Boy 2 Demand pointed out or laid out for us. I think right now it's outside linebacker. I know a lot of it will depend on what happens with Jamel Dean. If they end up moving on from Jamel, then they obviously need a starting corner on the outside opposite Zion McCollum. But I do think outside linebacker as of right now would be my top pick. And we actually put a poll up on our socials throughout the week I believe it was on when we were driving up here. I haven't lost track of the dates. On Monday, we put the polls up, and we'll be having the results of those polls will be coming out in the story on PewterReport.com in the coming days. But yeah, I think right now I'd lean outside linebacker, but I can hear arguments for the other ones as well, especially inside linebacker.
Yeah, outside linebacker is close for me. Corner would be in there as well. I would say inside linebacker, but since it's not the best overall class and not the best with free agency as well, definitely don't want to go for a reach in the first round specifically. I also wouldn't mind if the Bucs kind of, doubled up on a couple of positions just for insurance. And speaking of insurance, there's nobody better to work with than Briar Greaves Insurance. We love having them on as a partner and appreciate all that they do for everybody. If you're a longtime podcast listener, you probably remember the late, great Mark Cook talking about Briar Greaves Insurance. Pewter Report Scott Reynolds has been a Briar Greaves customer for years, and there simply isn't a better insurance company in the Tampa Bay area. Visit BriarGreavesInsurance.com to see for yourself. Briar Greaves Insurance is family-owned, and their main goal is helping people. They want to help people find the right insurance policy for you and your family. Whether it's home or auto, boating insurance, or business insurance, turn to Briar Greaves and find out why their personal touch and customer service sets them apart. The days of waiting on hold to speak with an insurance representative that you don't even know are over. With Briar Greaves Insurance, you'll have a relationship with your agent who can answer your questions and advise you on the best policies. As two recent hurricanes have shown all of us that live in the Tampa Bay area, there is a cost to living in paradise. Briar Greaves can help make sure you have the right hurricane and flood insurance to make sure you and your home are protected. So visit BriarGreavesInsurance.com today. That's Briar, B-R-I-E-R, Greaves, G-R-I-E-V-S, or call their office today at 813-876-4166. That is 813-876-4166, and tell them that Pewter Report sent you. So shout out to our friends over at Briar Greaves. And joining us now is Adam Slivon. Hello, Adam. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, Matt. Great to be on with you. And hello to all the Pewter people. And it was another day out at Mobile for the Senior Bowl practice. And the topic has been defensive players.
Yeah.
And there's a few that I want to mention here. Texas A&M defensive lineman Shamar Stewart, I thought, had a really impressive day, and his ability to convert speed to power is something that really impressed me. The production with the program that he was at wasn't the best. He only had 4.5 sacks in 3 seasons, but something that stood out to me was the 42 pressures that he created. He lives in the backfield. He's a guy at 285 pounds. He has all the traits, the elite traits, and he's more of a project. Probably like Logan Hall when he came out of Houston, somebody like that, but somebody with a lot of potential, and the sky's the limit for him. So I really liked what I saw from him as a potential first-round target. He's been heavily mocked to Tampa Bay. Another guy is Notre Dame inside linebacker Jack Kaiser. And yesterday talked a lot about Jeffrey Bassa, the work that he did. But Kaiser, he's another guy. A lot of big experience playing for the Fighting Irish. 69 career games, I believe, over 6 years, played in the national championship, but his coverage ability is something that's really a strong suit. And the Bucs, they might be forced to move on from Levante David should he retire. Kaiser is somebody that could fill in and probably not cost more than 4th, 5th round picks. So those are 2 guys that stood out to me on the defensive side, but also kind of want to get into some of the interviews that we had today too.
Yeah, just a couple of comments as well. First of all, even though I've said a lot of derogatory things about Notre Dame, there's nothing bad you could say about Notre Dame's defense. I mean, that was the stalwart of that group. That was the reason that they got to the national championship game, where they lost, but nonetheless, they did get to the national championship game. Shamar Stewart had the play of the day, in my opinion. I mean, shot out like a cannon, like on the ship at Raymond James Stadium. Got to the quarterback in 2 seconds, but didn't just get to the quarterback. Knocked the ball out with a strip sack, which is a little bit tough to do in these practice-like settings because you're not supposed to hit the quarterback and all these things. So he did a great job of, not hitting the quarterback, but still being able to knock the ball out. You don't see too many strip sacks at the Senior Bowl and, practices in training camp and things of that nature. And then he screamed at the top of his lungs after, "I'm like that. Yeah, I'm like that." So, we said on the show that the Bucs are trying to find the next outside linebacker with, what Shaq Barrett used to do for this team, which was knock the ball out, take the football away. So I had a brief flashback. I'm not comparing him to Shaq Barrett, but I had a brief flashback to Shaq Barrett and what he would do for this team when he would knock the ball out for sure. We watched a couple of different positions today. I looked a little bit more in the trenches. And I know we talked about this guy on the show yesterday, but getting to pay a little bit more attention to him. Mike Green out of Marshall. I mean, just absolutely
bullied,
eviscerated people today. It started out right away, just whoop, little move, little punch right around the tackle, right after the quarterback, the coach holding the football. Man, he had, you want to talk about like versatility and being able to do different things. Seeing him just pile drive the offensive tackle in front of him, just completely steamrolled on top of him, crushing him to the ground. It's a very viral video. You can see it all over social media. That was big. Donovan Ezeraku as well, someone from Boston College that we talked about yesterday. A lot of fantastic stuff. On the offensive side as well, like what I've seen from Jonah Monheim over the last 2 days, the center out of USC, hard-nosed, kind of Grizzly Adams type of dude in terms of just getting after it, being angry, getting physical, getting in your face. He won most of his reps, didn't win every single one, but there was one that he did lose, and then right away he was like, I want to get after it right again, and was able to win that rep. Jalen Travis, the tackle out of Iowa State, I thought he impressed a pretty good amount holding his own. The running backs didn't pay too much attention to them yesterday.
Bucs don't need a running back, but
they don't need a running back, so I didn't want to spend too much time on it. Donovan Edwards had some really good route running moves, but got to hold on to the ball, man. And he held on to it for the most part, but there was a deep ball down the field, and he was wide open. He was like 3 yards past the defender in that aspect. Couldn't hold on to it. Rashard Smith from SMU. I've actually been pretty impressed with him as a ball carrier.
Wide receiver.
And well, that's the thing. He's great in the passing game. Yeah. And I get it. Running backs, Senior Bowl, you can only see so much. There's only so much physicality, but it makes sense with him being converted wide receiver that he caught everything in his path over at running back. Let's see what else I got. Oh, at linebacker, Eugene Asante from Auburn. He was a dude, again, like, I think a lot of us gravitate towards the high energy guy, the dude that's gonna make a play, but let you know, let you know that he made a play. And you can't be the guy that makes one play and then all of a sudden, like, you're the big man on campus. Like, you have to do it over and over and over again. But he was in the mix a lot. Some good tackles in the run game, some good pass coverage. Liked watching him blitz in one-on-one coverages when it was just the linebacker against the running back and things of that nature. I thought he did a pretty good job there. So I like the electricity that he brought in these situations today. But you did mention a moment ago about some of the post press conferences that we had. So we had about 45 minutes each with each team later on at the Mobile Convention Center, and you were bopping around talking to some people. What were some of your biggest takeaways from speaking to the many athletes that were here today?
Yeah, when I was bopping around there, two guys that I really like talking to were Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll, for the reason that they spoke glowingly about Nate Scheelhaase. And the Bucs interviewed Scheelhaase as one of their offensive coordinator candidates. You never know which direction Tampa Bay might go. While Josh Grisard, he might be considered the favorite internally. You never really know. And last year it was Liam Cohen at like the 11th hour that got an interview and ended up being the guy. So with Scheelhaase, really liked in particular what Knoll had to say. And he mentioned that he was a guy that you want to be around. He's a connector. He has the football IQ. And that's something that Higgins also added, that he's super smart. And that's something that you want. And I remember talking to Devin Leary last year about Cohen, and he mentioned that he was a mastermind. And it kind of sounds like Scheelhaase is in the same boat, still young at 34. And he's somebody that he has a lot of knowledge of the offense as he's worked with quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. So somebody else that, while he might not be considered the favorite, the fact that he's interviewed, he's in the mix. I thought that was really interesting. And somebody else that had a really great comment today was Billy Bowman, the Oklahoma safety. And being from Oklahoma, he knows a little bit about Baker Mayfield. And he actually said a lot of things that Bucs players would certainly agree with in the locker room, that he's the ultimate competitor, wins at all costs, and he's kind of a legend on the Sooners campus, even though he hasn't played there for a few years now. And one player that he wants to emulate his game after, he told me, was Antoine Winfield Jr. And he's kind of shown it with the Sooners. He had 6 interceptions, 3 pick sixes in 2023, 3 interceptions in 2024. He had a good first day of the Senior Bowl practices. Didn't do as much today, but somebody now that I'm keeping my eye on, especially after talking to him.
Isn't it so cool that, you know, with Winfield, and you get it with Tristan Wirfs as well, that they are, because it used to just be like every wide receiver molds their game after Mike Evans. Now we're getting to the point that some other stars of these Bucs teams, the guys coming out of college, getting ready for the NFL, they want to model their game after Antoine Winfield Jr., Tristan Wirfs. So that's really been cool to see. There's no doubt about it that the Bucs would love to find the next Antoine Winfield Jr. or I guess they don't really need a tackle at the moment, but you know, the next star player that they can build on through the draft. Let me ask you the same thing that Bailey and I were just talking about a moment ago.
Yeah.
If you want to, what direction would you go with if it's the first round, the Bucs are on the clock? What position on defense specifically do you want them taking?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I look at the first round, I would definitely say edge rusher. And you look at last year, number 19, who did the Rams take? Jared Verse. And he turned out to be pretty good. And I think that's a direction that the Bucs should head this year, especially when you have guys like Mike Green Donovan Ezeraku, who've had really good Senior Bowl weeks. Green had 17 sacks with Marshall. Ezeraku had 16 and a half with Boston College. These are guys that can make plays, and that's what the Bucs need at the outside linebacker position. I know a lot of fans are also clamoring for a cornerback, and I think cornerback is a direction, a little bit of a deeper group. I think they can maybe go round 2, get a guy maybe like Darian Porter, or just really a playmaker. That's what they need. So I would say edge rusher, cornerback, and then maybe address inside linebacker with the 3rd round pick and get somebody in free agency. What about you, Matt?
I really think if you have the edge rusher that you love there, I think you always got to go with like a premier dynamic edge rusher. Inside linebacker, there's other ways to find it. They think they found it with Servatier Dennis if he's able to stay healthy.
And that was the 5th round.
Exactly. So I'd lean outside linebacker, maybe followed by corner, because obviously they're kind of in a weird spot right now with Jamel Dean. But one thing that's not a weird spot, actually, it's a great spot. And if you want a nice night out with great food and drinks, there's no better spot to go to than Walk-Ons.
Yeah, so what happened out there tonight?
We struck out at home with leftovers, then we remembered Walk-Ons.
What effect did the situation have?
Spirit soared. Nick took on a burger. Jen obliterated her ribeye po' boy. And speaking of spirits, Laura even scored a real tasty cocktail. She needed that.
Any lessons learned today?
Yeah. Head straight to Walk-Ons.
Scratch-made dishes, wall-to-wall TVs, craft beers, and cocktails. Walk-Ons for the win.
Yeah, shout out to Walk-Ons. We love going there. There's 3 in the Tampa Bay location, one over in Lakeland, another in Wesley Chapel, and one pretty close to Raymond James Stadium over in Midtown, the one that I frequent the most. So make sure that you download the new Walk-Ons app and start getting some bonus points every time you go to Walk-Ons. You can get Walk-Ons rewards, including free mozzarella logs when you download it today. You can also try wings with their Southern bourbon sauce and earn 100 bonus points when you do so. So a lot of benefits to going to Walk-Ons. Also fantastic happy hour deals and appetizers and all that good stuff. So shout out to our friends over at Walk-Ons. Adam, you also had an article that came out quite recently. We just talked about the defensive side, but where the Bucs might be looking at on the offensive side. Please explain a little more.
Yeah, so you can't neglect the offensive side of the football. Even though the Bucs were the 4th scoring offense in the league, there are some needs to address there. And I think you start with the backup quarterback situation with Kyle Trask. If the team decides not to pay him $4 million, what does that look like? You have Michael Pratt, who was a 7th round pick by the Packers, let go, spent the season on the practice squad. Do they think highly enough of him to be the number 2 quarterback going forward? Or maybe they do a throw and get a guy like Jackson Dart, no pun intended, or go for somebody else later on in the draft. So I think quarterback, you start there because that's the most important position. That wins you football games. Going down the list, left guard with Ben Bredeson being a free agent. You kind of have to address who's that going to be. Do they re-sign Ben Bredeson at an increased salary? Do they draft somebody on day 3 of the draft? Jason Light cannot refuse an offensive lineman that he likes. And Elijah Klein's also in the mix there. So I think that, along with adding depth. So Robert Hainsey, Justin Schooler, free agents, they need to get more bodies in the room if some of those guys depart. So that would be 2nd. 3rd, wide receiver. Chris Godwin is likely to come back. He loves Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay loves him too. And you have Chris, you have Mike, you have Jalen McMillan. You need another wide receiver. You can't have guys off the practice squad. You can't rely on them. Like a guy like Sterling Shepard filled in great for being a practice squad wide receiver. Disappointed at the end of the year, was kind of a disappearing act like a magician. And then you have guys like Ryan Miller. That just doesn't cut it. You need a guy, maybe it is Jalen Knoll or Jaden Higgins, somebody that's young, that can develop and really lead the wide receiver room to close out the decade.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you're saying. I get it. Quarterback is the most important position, but I think because it's the backup, and you know Baker's your guy anyway.
He doesn't want to miss a game.
Right. I think I would knock that down a little bit just because it's backup. There's no denying that quarterback's the most important position. That's not my argument. But I think an immediate starting position kind of takes a little bit more weight instead of it. So that's really the only thing I would slightly disagree with a little bit. I'd probably go guard, then quarterback, then wide receiver, because they do need to find the eventual replacements to Mike and Chris, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the most rapid of things. But everything has been moving quite rapidly here in Mobile, Alabama. It's been a lot of fun covering the Senior Bowl. We'll have more coverage tomorrow on our social media from day 3 of the Senior Bowl, which is a lot of fun too, because they tend to go a little more red zone and things like that. So we'll see more touchdowns and hopefully athletic plays from the receivers and the cornerbacks specifically. So just a reminder again to everybody, we have a Pewter Insider coming up on Friday. We'll talk about whatever's going on with the offensive coordinator search because things could change at any minute and any second. But that'll be at 1:30 on Friday with our Pewter Platinum and Premier members. And Adam, you will be part of the live Bucs mock draft show, also with Josh Capo. That's coming up on Sunday, as Josh chimes in. That's Sunday at 9:00 a.m. So join them live. Check it out later. It'll be on our YouTube channel. So make sure you check it out. And also, if you're not already doing so, please follow us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We are at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment below. More content coming out from pewterreport.com from the Senior Bowl and our YouTube channel, and that'll do it for us on tonight's show. So for Josh Capo, for Scott Reynolds, for Bailey Adams, for our intern Isaiah Delgado, for Adam Slivon, I'm Matt Matera. And I just want to say thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you soon for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.